Welcome to Pastor Andrew's Inspiration. If you enjoy these videos, please click on the subscribe button below and the bell for more. Welcome to our online church, a congregation made up of many from around the world. No offering is necessary. Subscribing and watching videos will keep us alive under God's watchful eyes. Today we will be talking about biblical names starting with G, Part 2. If you haven't watched Part 1, please go back and watch it after this. Gad. Gad was in the book of Genesis, the first of the two sons of Jacob and Zilpah, and the originator of the Israelite tribe of Gad. However, some biblical scholars view this as post-diction, an eponymous metaphor, providing an etymology of the connection of the tribe to others in the Israelite confederation. The text of the book of Genesis implies that the name of Gad means luck or fortune or fortunate in Hebrew. The biblical account shows Zilpah's status as a handmaiden change to that of an actual wife of Jacob in Genesis chapter 30. Her handmaid status is held by some biblical scholars as showing that the author saw the tribe of Gad as being not of completely Israelite origin. Many scholars believe that Gad was a late addition to the Israelite confederation, as inferred by the Moabite stone, which seemingly distinguishes between the Israelites and the tribe of Gad. Gad, by this theory, is rumored to have originally been a northwards migrating nomadic tribe, at the time when the other tribes were quite settled in Canaan. The book of Jasher states that Gad married Uzith. Uzith was the daughter of Amram, the granddaughter of Uz, and the great-grandson of Nahor, son of Terah. The prophet Jadur's shrine in Al-Salt, Jordan, contains the tomb of Gad, known by Arabs and Muslims as Jadur. It has an elevation of 866 meters and is located in a cemetery. Gaddi. Gaddi, the son of Susi, of the house of Manasseh, was a scout sent to Canaan prior to the crossing of the Jordan River. In Numbers chapter 13, of the tribe of Joseph, namely of the tribe of Manasseh. Gaddi, the son of Susi. Gaddiel. Gaddiel, the son of Sodi, of the house of Zebulun, was a scout sent to Canaan prior to the crossing of the Jordan River in Numbers chapter 13. Of the tribe of Zebulun. Gaddiel, the son of Sodi. Gaius. Gaius is the Greek spelling for the male Roman name Caius, a figure in the New Testament of the Bible. A Christian, Gaius is mentioned in Macedonia as a traveling companion of Paul, along with Aristarchus. Both in Acts chapter 19. One chapter later, Gaius, who has a residence in Derbe, is named as one of Paul's 7 traveling companions who waited for him at Troas in Acts chapter 20. Gaius is mentioned as having a residence in Corinth, as being one of only a few people there, the others being Crispus and the household of Stephanas, who were baptized by Paul, who founded the church in that city in 1 Corinthians chapter 1. Gaius is referred to in a final greeting portion of the epistle to the Romans in Romans chapter 16, as Paul's host and also host of the whole church, in whatever city Paul is writing from at the time. In all likelihood, this was Corinth. Lastly, Gaius of Ephesus, to whom the third epistle of John is addressed in 3 John chapter 1. He may be Gaius mentioned in any of the other contexts. Gaddiel. Gaddiel is a masculine given or family name. The name or word Gaddiel means majesty and is used to honor and revere. When the Arabic language spread across non-Arabic regions, Gaddiel has also become a name for some Arabic-speaking Christians, non-Arab Muslims, and non-Arabs, and has been added to other language dictionaries with the majestic meaning. Gaddiel might have other meanings in different languages. In the Bible, Gaddiel is used as a veneration for God in Psalms 113 and 145, in Isaiah chapters 26 and 30, and the great doxology written and read in churches in Arabic. Gallio. Gallio, the son of the rhetoric Seneca the elder, and the elder brother of Seneca the younger, was born in Corduba in 5 BC. He was adopted by Lucius Junius Gallio, a rhetorician or orator of some repute, from whom he took the name of Junius Gallio. His brother Seneca, who dedicated to him the treatises De Ira and De Vita Vita, speaks of the charm of his disposition, also alluded to by the poet Statius. It is probably that he was banished to Corsica with his brother, and that they returned together to Rome when Agrippina selected Seneca to be tutor to Nero towards the close of the reign of Claudius. Gallio was proconsul of the newly constituted senatorial province of Achaia, but seems to have been compelled by ill health to resign the post within a few years. He was referred to by Claudius as my friend and proconsul in the Delphi inscription around 52. Gallio was a suffect or replacement consul in the mid-50s. And Cassius Dio records that he introduced Nero's performances not long after the death of his brother Seneca. Gallio was attacked in the Senate by Silenus Clemens, who accused him of being a parricide and public enemy, though the Senate unanimously appealed to Silenus not to profit from public misfortunes to satisfy a private animosity. He did not survive this amnesty long. When his second brother, Aeneas Mela, opened his veins after being accused of involvement in a conspiracy, Gallio seems to have committed suicide, perhaps under instruction in 65 AD. According to the Acts of the Apostles, when Gallio was proconsul of Achaia, Paul the Apostle was brought in front of him by Sosthenes, head of the local synagogue, with the accusation of having violated the Roman law of religious tolerance. Gaddiel, however, was indifferent towards religious disputes between the Jews and Jewish Christians. Therefore, he dismissed the charges against Paul and had both him and the Jews removed from the court in Acts chapter 18. Gaddiel's tenure has been fairly accurately dated to between AD 51 and 52. Therefore, the events of Acts 18 can be dated to this period. This is noteworthy because it is the most truthfully known date in the life of Paul. Gamaliel. Gamaliel the elder was a leading authority in the Sanhedrin in the early 1st century CE. He was the son of Simon ben Hillel and grandson of the great Jewish teacher Hillel the elder. Gamaliel is thought to have died in 52 CE. He fathered Simon ben Gamaliel, who was named for Gamaliel's father, and a daughter who married a priest named Simon ben Nathaniel. Gamaliel is recognized as a Pharisee doctor of Jewish law. Acts of the Apostles 5 speaks of Gamaliel as a man held in great esteem by all Jews, and as the Jewish law teacher of Paul the Apostle in Acts chapter 22. Gamaliel encouraged the fellow Pharisees to show leniency to the apostles of Jesus Christ in Acts chapter 5. The Acts of the Apostles introduces Gamaliel as a Pharisee and celebrated doctor of the Mosaic Law in Acts chapter 5. The passage describes Gamaliel as presenting an argument against killing the apostles, reminding them about the previous revolts of Theudas and Judas of Galilee, which had collapsed quickly after the deaths of those individuals. Gamaliel's advice was accepted after his concluding argument. And now I say unto you, refrain from these men, and let them alone. For if this counsel or this work be of men, it will come to naught. But if it be of God, ye cannot overthrow it, lest haply ye be found even to fight against God. In Acts chapter 5. The book of Acts later goes on to describe Paul the Apostle, recounting that although born in Tarsus, he was brought up in Jerusalem at the feet of Gamaliel, and taught according to the perfect manner of the law of the fathers in Acts chapter 22. No details are given about which teachings Paul adopted from Gamaliel, as it is assumed that as a Pharisee, Paul was already recognized in the community at that time as a devout Jew. If Gamaliel influenced aspects of Christianity, it is unmentioned. However, there is no other record of Gamaliel ever having taught in public, but the Talmud does describe Gamaliel as teaching a student who displayed impudence in learning, which a few scholars identify as a possible reference to Paul. If Paul studied under this famous rabbi, arguing that there is a marked contrast in the tolerance that Gamaliel is said to have expressed about Christianity, with the murderous rage against Christians that Paul is described as having prior to his conversion in Acts chapter 8. The Gospel of Gamaliel is a hypothetical book, speculated to exist by some scholars, perhaps a part of Pilate Apocrypha, while no ancient sources directly refer to such a gospel. Laduz and Baumstark first proposed that such a book existed in 1906. Scholars who believe such a book once existed have reconstructed it from a homily the Lament of Mary, or Laha Maryam, by the bishop named Syriacus. They believe Laha Maryam extensively quotes the Gospel of Gamaliel. The lament includes a section that leads with I, Gamaliel, which caused the speculation that these sections were actually quoting an existing gospel. Most scholars believe these sections are simply written by Syriacus from the perspective of Gamaliel. The hostile view mockingly calls it an imaginary work. Reasonably complete manuscripts of Laha Maryam exist in Ethiopian and Kashuni language versions. Regardless of whether Laha Maryam is quoting a lost gospel or not, Gamaliel does feature in it. He is a witness to a miracle of healing in the raising of the dead man at Jesus' tomb. Jesus' abandoned grave clothes have miraculous powers. Gamaliel also talks with Pontius Pilate, who is portrayed confidently as a Christian himself. Ecclesiastical tradition claims that Gamaliel had embraced the Christian faith, and his tolerant attitude toward early Christians is explained by this. According to Photius I of Constantinople, he was baptized by St. Peter and John the Apostle, together with his son Abiban and Nicodemus. The Clementine literature suggests that he maintained secrecy about the conversion. He continued to be a member of the Sanhedrin for the purpose of covertly assisting his fellow Christians. The Eastern Orthodox Church venerates Gamaliel as a saint, and he is commemorated on August 2nd, the date when tradition holds that his relics were found, along with those of Stephen the proto-martyr, Abiban, Gamaliel's son, and Nicodemus. The traditional liturgical calendar of the Catholic Church celebrates the same feast day of the finding of the relics on August 3rd. It is said that, in the 5th century, by a miracle, his body had been discovered and taken to Pisa Cathedral. Gamaliel is referred to in the 15th century Catalan document, Acts of Latzner. Gamul. Gamul, meaning rewarded or recompense, was head of the 20th of 24 priestly divisions instituted by King David. Gareb. A warrior named Gareb from the tribe of Judah is mentioned in 2 Samuel chapter 23 and the 1 Chronicles chapter 11. Two among King David's guard of 30, Ira and Gareb, are both qualified there as the Ithrite. They may have come from Yatir in the mountains of Judah. Gatam. Gatam is a name which appears in Genesis and Chronicles in a genealogy of the Edomites in Genesis chapter 36 and 1 Chronicles chapter 1. Gatam is described the son of Eliphaz, the son of Esau, who is, according to the Bible, the forefather of the Edomites. In the passages which describe Gatam as the son of Eliphaz, he is listed alongside his brothers, Taman, Omar, Zepho, and Kenaz, according to Genesis. A similar but slightly larger list of brothers in Chronicles includes Amalek as a brother of Gatam. However, in Genesis chapter 36, Gatam and Amalek, along with the previously unmentioned Korah, are described not as individual sons, but as clans of Eliphaz. Gazez. In the Masoretic text of the Hebrew Bible, two individuals by the name of Gazez appear in 1 Chronicles chapter 2. However, the Peshitta includes only one Gazez, and at least one biblical scholar has suggested that the second Gazez may have been included in the Masoretic text by mistake. Gazez was the son of Haran, grandson of Caleb, a descendant of Jacob. His paternal grandmother was Iphah, wife of Caleb. The second Gazez was a brother of Caleb and uncle of the first Gazez in 1 Chronicles chapter 2. Gazam. Gazam is the family name of a group of Nethinim in Ezra chapter 2 and Nehemiah chapter 7. Both instances are in copies of a list which claims to contain the family names of people who turned from the Babylonian captivity to Yehud Medinata. Gedaliah. Gedaliah, meaning Jah has become great, was, according to the narratives in the Hebrew Bible, book of Jeremiah and second book of Kings, appointed by Nebuchadnezzar II of Babylon as governor of Yehud province, which was formed after the defeat of the kingdom of Judah and the destruction of Jerusalem, in the part of the territory that previously formed the kingdom. He was supported by a Chaldean guard stationed in Mizpah. On hearing the appointment, the Jews that had taken refuge in surrounding countries returned to Judah. Gedaliah was the son of Ahikam, who saved the life of the prophet Jeremiah, and the grandson of Shaphan, who is mentioned in relation to the discovery of the scroll of teaching that some scholars identify as the core of the book of Deuteronomy. He zealously began to encourage the people to cultivate the fields and vineyards, and thus lay the foundation of security. Many who had fled to neighboring lands during the war of destruction were attracted by the news of the revival of the community. They came to Gedaliah in Mizpah and were warmly welcomed by him. Ishmael, son of Nethaniah, and the 10 men who were with him murdered Gedaliah, together with most of the Jews who had joined him, and many Babylonians whom Nebuchadnezzar had left with Gedaliah in Jeremiah chapter 41. The remaining Judeans feared the vengeance of Nebuchadnezzar and fled to Egypt. Although the dates are not clear from the Bible, this is probably about 582 BCE in Jeremiah chapter 52. Some 4 to 5 years and 3 months after the destruction of Jerusalem and the first temple in 586 BCE. The lament, the assassination of Gedaliah, which left Judah devoid of any Jews and Jewish rule, and completed the destruction of the first temple. The Jewish sages established the 3rd day of Tishrei as the fast of Gedaliah. Although Gedaliah's assassination perhaps occurred on the 1st day of Tishrei, the fast is observed on the 3rd day so as not to coincide with Rosh Hashanah. Gehazi. Gehazi, meaning Valley of Vision or Valley of Avarice, is a figure found in the books of Kings in the Hebrew Bible, a servant of the prophet Elisha. Gehazi enjoyed a position of power, but was ultimately corrupt, misusing his authority to cheat Naaman the Syrian, a general afflicted with leprosy. As punishment, Elisha cursed Gehazi, transferring Naaman's leprosy to him and his descendants forever. In rabbinic literature, Gehazi is identified as one of the 4 commoners who forfeited his share in the afterlife because of his wickedness. He is the subject of a poem by Rudyard Kipling. Gehazi was the servant of the prophet Elisha. he appears in connection with the history of the Shunammite woman and her son, and of Naaman the Syrian. On the latter occasion, Gehazi, overcome with avarice, obtained in the prophet's name 2 talents of silver, and 2 changes of garments from Naaman. Consequently, he was guilty of duplicity and dishonesty of conduct, causing Elisha to denounce his crime with righteous sternness, and determined that the leprosy of Naaman would cleave to him and his descendants forever. After Elisha cursed Gehazi, Gehazi became leprous as white as snow in 2 Kings chapter 5. Later in the biblical narrative, he appeared before King Joram, to whom he recounted the great deeds of his master. The Cambridge Bible for schools and colleges suggests that it is probable that the accounts of Elisha's work and influence are not related in 2 Kings in their chronological order. In rabbinic literature, Gehazi is one of those who, denying the resurrection of the dead, have no portion in the world to come, but share the doom of Balaam, Dog, and Ahithophel. It was while on the way to Shunem with Elisha's staff that Gehazi proved himself to be a skeptic concerning the resurrection. He considered the whole procedure a joke, and instead of obeying the order to not address even one word to any passerby, nor return any salutation, he asked sarcastically of those he met whether they believed the staff had the power to restore the dead to life. For this reason he failed. In other ways, too, Gehazi displayed a mean character, as for instance in his behavior to the Shunammite woman. He drove away Elisha's disciples. He possessed a magnet by which he lifted up the idol made by Jeroboam, so that it was seen between heaven and earth. He had Yahweh engraved on it, and in consequence the idol, a calf, pronounced the first 2 words of the Decalogue. When Naaman went to Elisha, the latter was studying the passage concerning the 8 unclean creeping things. Therefore, when Gehazi returned, after inducing Naaman to give him presents, Elisha in his rebuke enumerated 8 precious things which Gehazi had taken, and told him that it was time for him to take the punishment prescribed for one who catches any of the 8 cherubim. The punishment being, in this case, leprosy. The 4 lepers at the gate announced Sennacherib's defeat were Gehazi and his 3 sons. Nevertheless, Elisha is censured for having been too severe. He thrust him away with both hands, instead of using one for the purpose and the other for the drawing him toward himself. Elisha went to Damascus to induce Gehazi to repent, but Gehazi refused, quoting his master's own teachings to the effect that a sinner who had led others into sin had no hope. Gehazi was interrupted in his conversation with the king, because the praises of a holy man should not be sung by a sinner. He had been disrespectful to his teacher, calling him by name. His character is said to have been that of man who, though learned, was jealous and greedy, unchaste and cynic. He is ostensibly the subject of Rudyard Kipling's poem Gehazi, thought to be aimed at Rufus Isaacs, a member of the British Liberal government at the time the poem was composed. Gehazi also appears in John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress. This was the biblical name starting with G, part 2 of 4. Please click on the red subscribe button below and the bell for more. Adonai Nisi, the Lord is our banner. God's blessings be upon us all and on this message.